I would have focused a lot more heavily on building a sales and marketing process. Like I didn't know what I didn't know back then. And I was really good at scrappy networking and still am. And that's how I've built my business. So I'm proud of that. But at the same time, if I knew what I know now, then I would have figured out a better sales and marketing process that I started 3 years ago, because it would be paying off so much more now. Whereas I kind of figured it out earlier this year. And so now I've got a little bit of time before that comes back around, if that makes sense.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Founder. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Natalie Cook. And Natalie started her founding journey, had a bit of a false start at the beginning of her career, not quite knowing what she wanted to do. And so started helping out other business founders and startups and with a variety of things for them. And then got a real corporate job with finance and Starbucks. And kept doing, but alongside of that, kept doing her own thing. And then her projects got shut down with the Starbucks with COVID, and so decided to go back into consulting, focused on a lot of what she was doing full time, and led to the founding of her current business. And so, with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Natalie.
Thanks for saying. Oh gosh, I can't talk. Thanks so much for having me, Devin.
Absolutely. So now before we dive into your founding journey, just as a reminder to the audience, so Natalie has been a guest on a couple of our sister podcasts, both the Inventive Journey and the Inventive Expert. So if you want to go hear Natalie's full journey, not just a founding journey, definitely make sure to catch that episode or check that one out. And similarly, if you want to get some great expertise from Natalie, go check out that Inventive Expert episode as well. So with that, now we are going to dive into your founding journey. But tell us a little bit. I gave the 30-second version of a much longer founding journey, but how you kind of got started with the false start with your career and figuring out what you're gonna do as you're getting to the founding portion of your business.
Yeah, so I can even back up a little further into before I started doing freelance work. I worked in philanthropy for 5.5 years and was doing finance, similar roles. I got an MBA while I was there. A few years before that, my husband and I had an Etsy store where he built furniture and I did like very minimal work, but I was super jealous because he like felt like he was running a business. I was a total side gig, but it had sparked my entrepreneurial interest. And I was like, how do I get to running a business? But then I went this big corporate route, which was like getting an MBA. And I worked in philanthropy. And then I had a 1-year-old and I just didn't know. I was just kind of at this point where I was like, I want to work with for-profit companies. I really wanted to own my own business, but I'm not the idea generator. Like I'm a good improver of processes, but I'm not like, here's a product and I can just go sell it. So I always felt a little bit handicapped in that somehow. And so I just started freelancing. I just was at a point where I was like, I don't want to work here. I don't know where I want to go. So I freelanced, like you said, and that it gave me a lot of opportunity. I had in my mind, I want to work for startups. But that was really just because I wanted to work for businesses that were running their business. And when I was in grant making, I was always a little bit like at this huge, way high up level. And I was a little jealous of the grantees that we were funding because they were running their own businesses. They were like doing all the things. And I just always wanted to do all the things. So while I was freelancing, while I was doing all this consulting work, I felt like I could get a little bit of that just drive of the entrepreneurial spirit. So fast forward, I went to corporate finance, and Starbucks and corporate was just like it was not for me. Like it was because I wanted to run my own firm and I wanted to be that business owner. So when I left Starbucks, it just made sense. It was like, why not just go back to what I was doing while I was freelancing, but with a little bit more focus on was, because when I had started, it was like, hey, can you just pay me to do something? I think I'd interned for the CEO of a startup while I was getting my MBA. And when I had left my job, I just emailed him and I was like, can you pay me to do anything? Like, I'll just do whatever, just give me something. And that kind of scrappy approach got me a lot of work. And then when I was able to kind of reflect on what I wanted, when I finally jumped in, I had a lot more focus. So that's kind of what founded the company. And then I learned very early on that all businesses need finance support. And it was the thing that I could offer the most. And it was what my—
let me just ask maybe just one question and dive in. So you know, kind of, and that's a great background. Now, as you're saying, okay, you know, COVID comes along, Starbucks projects are shutting down. I'm going to go to see if I can't, you know, go to the entrepreneurial route that I always wanted to do and kind of start that up. Now, was the focus, you know, going to just be, hey, we're going to provide financial assistance or direction or support, you know, not giving them money, but that financial side of the business? Was that the original intent? Because sometimes you start out and you go way broad and you say, hey, I can help you with a whole bunch of things and I know everything about business and every aspect, and going broad, sometimes it works and other times, you know, it loses the message or it loses the focus. And so, and other times you go so narrow that, you know, you say, hey, all I'm going to do is financial report, and I'm just making it up, but financial reports. And then you find out that they, you know, that's not enough to build a business around. So kind of walk us through a little bit as you were deciding, hey, I want to found this business, I want to get going. Kind of, how did you figure, or where did you start at?
Yeah, great question. So before I was at Starbucks, I was very broad, very general. And that was too chaotic for me. I didn't know how to sell it. I didn't feel comfortable selling it. So then after being at Starbucks and having been in finance in a more traditional role, whereas before I was in sort of finance roles and I had an MBA in finance, so I could do it. I gained all this experience. And so I was able to kind of connect these dots. And so I actually, when I went back into the consulting, I did forecasting only. So I would forecast and help people build pitch decks in order to go raise funds, because I had done all of the little pieces of that and I knew enough to be helpful. It was also the thing that every founder who was trying to start a business could not figure out how to build a forecast. And that was actually like my biggest expertise. So I was able to provide it. So I narrowed down on that area. Now we've since pivoted where I still do forecasts, but I don't do pre-revenue forecasts anymore. But it was narrow and in that sense of what I offered.
So now you say, okay, started out narrow. Now so that would have been in 2000 or 2021?
2020. Yeah.
So now, so you say, okay, start out a bit narrow, learn that, hey, and that's usually you start in your comfort zone, what you know and what you can provide. So now as you started to found that and you figured out it was a bit too narrow, how did you figure out where to broaden it to, or what additional services and, you know, get that expertise or get that team, or kind of figure out how to pitch it? Walk us through a little bit as you kind of went through that expansion of it.
Yeah. So while I was doing these forecasts, basically the way the projects would work is I would work founder for 6 weeks. I would build them a pitch, you know, I'd build them the financials they needed in their pitch and the slides, the kind of financial slides that go along with it. And then I started having clients that needed more ongoing support. Like they were in the middle of pitching. They wanted that backstop of someone to be able to help them. So a couple of my contracts turned into, hey, can you just do a monthly rate and we'll talk every month. And that would include forecast updates. So I did that for a couple clients, and then slowly started to get into the post revenue kind of, they'd recently fundraised just out of networking, like, hey, I need help with this other finance thing. And so I would just kind of start helping. So I had a couple clients where all I was doing was monthly meetings with the founder. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing fractional CFO support. I just kind of happened into it. Like I didn't intentionally try to do that. It was more of just, as I'm sure you know, you get a client there, you're like, hey, but can you help me with this other thing? And you're like, oh yeah, I do that, but you're not actively marketing for it. So I happened upon a couple clients like that, and it made me realize that was actually what I loved to do, was help the clients go from, you know, they'd already gotten to some amount of revenue, but they really needed to take the next step. And a lot of it is building that structure, if the back end of the financial side of their business. So while I still love forecasting, I kind of would get these clients, I would do the forecast and they would go away for 2 years. So part of it was a business decision of like, this was going to offer me more recurring revenue that was less risky. But also it just provided so much more value to our clients because we were able to work with them for a long period of time, see how it changes over time, and be able to kind of to really get to know the owners of the business. So it was a pretty natural progression. And now we've done another series of evolution in that, but that was the forecasting to fractional CFO.
So now you make that evolution, you figure it out, and you're right, and sometimes, although I'll also say sometimes clients will ask me to do something, I'm like, I could probably do that. And on the other hand, I have no desire to do it, or it would take, I'm not the best person that could do that for you. Go talk to that person over there. But it's that fine line, because especially early on, you're saying, hey, I'd love to get the additional work, additional income. Now, do I take that on because I could figure it out, but it's going to take, it's probably not what I should be doing, versus, hey, this is a good indication of where I should be. So it's always interesting to kind of find that balance of I should go in that direction versus I shouldn't. So now, you kind of make that expansion. I don't know, I was going to say pivot, but evolution. Walk us through now as you kind of continue to expand out. How have things gone as far as now bringing on clients? Some people get into it and you find out, hey, I love this, and I wish I'd been doing this earlier, and it's been a great experience as I founded the business. And other times you're saying, I wish I'd just stayed with corporate, or I hadn't done this, and this isn't very fun, or this, I have to do all these other things that I never expected I had to do with the business, and I just don't want to do them. So walk us through kind of that, or how things have gone since you founded it to kind of to where you're at today.
Yeah. So today, our core focus, we have kind of three main products. One is advisory, which is monthly or quarterly advising, and / business coaching. So it's all finance related. We take a very coaching approach, but it's advisory services. So you get our expertise without the back end reporting. Then we have fractional CFO services, and those are for businesses between 1 to 15 million in annual revenue. They're looking to scale or thinking of selling in the next 5 years. And that's our target market, is growing businesses or businesses that are thinking of selling. And then we also do project-based support. Now that gets a little funky. There are things we just say no to that I've just learned to say no to things that are outside my expertise or things I'm not comfortable with. But we do project-based support and anything that kind of falls into the finance lens. So pricing projects, gross margin, contribution margin analysis that you would need a financial analyst to complete. That's where we're at today. And I feel really solid about that piece. I'm really grateful the learning I had to do forecasting for pre-revenue startups. We don't do that anymore because it is too expensive for the startup to hire us to do it. And that is what the main learning I learned was that in order for me to have a profitable business, I couldn't work with the clients that were needed to pay us the rates in order to do those one-off forecasting projects. And so that a lot of it is what pushed us into where we're at today. I wouldn't have changed how I started the products when I started, just because I learned so much. And we still will do advising for certain, occasionally we'll take on a client or two, but I'm more of I will say no. The things that we say no to, we don't do any bookkeeping work. We don't do any tax work. We have really good referral partners that we use, that we vetted and like and work with, and we will find people for our clients if we don't have someone in-house.
So now let me ask just maybe one question on that. So you say we, and there's two different meanings of we. Sometimes when you start out, it's we, and it's really just me, but I want to say we that because it sounds like it's a bigger business or a bigger team. And other times we does mean you have support staff, you have other people, and you've expanded since that. So kind of first question, I'll give you the compound question, which is always unfair because I don't like giving compound, but which one of the we's are referring to? And if it's people that you have hired, kind of walk us through when you started. Did you start with yourself, and how, when did you start hiring?
So right now I would say we're close to the bigger team we, but still more of a me, if that makes sense. I'm in the intermediate phase of that growth. I'm still a core CFO, if that makes sense, but I have a support staff. I started out, it was just me for 2 years. And the first hire I made was for a virtual assistant. And I think that was the right choice because there were just little things that were taking too much of my time so that, I could focus on the things that actually drove revenue.
Mhm.
Now I have a part-time financial analyst who supports me on all of our reporting. So all our client reporting, she takes over. We've got that process down, and then she'll help me with other projects as they come up. And I have a contractor senior strategist who helps on a project basis. So if I need extra hands on a high level strategy project, I've got a contractor that can come and jump in. I've had 2 other analysts and contractors in the past, and I've kind of rotated in and out just because they haven't been the right fit for the company. And so I think that's a big learning that I've had of just waiting for the right people to be on the team. And then now I have another VA and a VA service that I use for different tasks that are kind of behind the scenes operational focus, like email marketing. I have some help with that I don't really have to pay attention.
No, makes sense. Now let me or one follow-up question to that, which is, so it sounds like you leverage and not in all by means a good way, and I do a lot of the same thing. Different VAs, part-time independent contractors. Now, is that because, hey, we kind of offer some of the fractional services and so we're going to practice what we preach, or is it in reality just, hey, this works well better for our setup and for kind of what we're going to be offering? And so kind of, how did you make that decision as you started to grow the team a bit?
Yeah, my first VA I hired as a W-2, partially just for compliance sake, like where we were in the States and what I was asking her to do. And then she ended up wanting to go a different direction, and that made sense for the business. So then, it's kind of a weird story of how I ended up with the structure I have now, but right now it just works for the business and I don't want to change it until I have a really good reason to. So my things that I'm looking for in order to make the switch of what we have like one VA full time is just capacity. We don't have enough work right now to warrant that because we're really efficient and my team is efficient and the needs that I have are small. So it makes sense the way that I have it structured. When I look forward to what I want the team to be, I want our CFOs to be W-2 employees, and that's just a decision that I've made. Part of that is just because of how I want them to operate, and then my compliance knowledge, where I would like them to be compliant with IRS laws.
I like it. And I probably take a lot of the same time. It's interesting, although I took kind of the opposite approach. I started out hiring full-time people and kind of looking to build a team that way. And couple things that I figured out. One is I just don't like having full-time employees. I can't do it all on my own. So don't get me wrong. We have our attorneys and we have people, but we also shifted the model to be more independent contractors to give us that flexibility to scale up and to scale down. And now you're not having to deal with a lot of the, whether it's taxes, you're not having to deal with all the benefits, you're not having to deal with having to provide office space, and and also, things speed up or slow down if they're doing it on themselves doing it on fractional or part-time basis. Then it's not, hey, I have to lay off because things slow down. And so I definitely think that that is a great model that a lot of times people overlook just because you get into the conventional way of this is how everybody always does it.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely want our whole team will probably be flex time for a while. Like we'll just have ebbs and flows of how clients come in and out for probably another year or two, if not 3 to 4 years, just because it takes that long to build up that client basis. And really, I mean, we don't need to get into it, but 1099 versus W-2 is should much more be looked at from an IRS compliance versus a business cost decision, in my opinion, but I don't need to get into that right now.
That's a whole conversation in and of itself, and would be a fun one to have in the future. But
exactly.
Well, awesome. Well, now as we've kind of walked through the founding journey, and definitely appreciate you sharing it, it is a great time to jump to the question I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So that question is every business, and I always say it always feels like you're still early on, but if we go back to the earliest or early on days of the business, there are typically decisions you would, not even mistakes, but decisions you would make differently if you were able to do so. And so with that in mind, if you were able to go back to the early days of the business, what would be that one decision you would make differently?
Yeah, I would have focused a lot more heavily on building a sales and marketing process. Like I didn't know what I didn't know back then. And I was really good at scrappy networking and still am. And that's how I've built my business. So I'm proud of that. But at the same time, if I knew what I know now, then I would have figured out a better sales and marketing process that I started 3 years ago, because it would be paying off so much more now. Whereas I kind of figured it out earlier this year. And so now I've got a little bit of time before that comes back around, if that makes sense.
Nope, definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a good one that if you had a time machine that you would go back and approach a bit different,
Exactly.
but also a good learning experience. So well, with that, now as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, you can email me at natalie@copper8strategies.com. I'm on LinkedIn, which is Natalie Cook, but that's a kind of general name. So email is great. My website is copper8strategies.com and my blog is financefightclub.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to reach out, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Natalie, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of your listeners that are out there, if you can help us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey into success, just make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Definitely helps to help all those startups and small businesses out there. And on that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Natalie, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Yeah,